B-BBEE during a pandemic? That is the question I'm posing to Chancellor of the University of the Free State and Professor of Practice in the Johannesburg Business School, College of Business and Economics, Professor Bonang Mohale. Prof, good evening and thank you for your time tonight. The COVID-19 pandemic has no color. Why must relief have a color? That's the question.
In fact, we need broad-based black economic empowerment more so under COVID-19 than at any other time in history. Because when you look at the three things that we must do just to stay alive, the first is called social distancing, the second is self-quarantine, the third is wash your hands at least for 20 seconds. How do you practice social distancing in Soweto, where there's unofficially 3.5 million people, officially 2.5 million people, more than the population of Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, and Swaziland? 4-roomed house, average of 5 people, only 2 bedrooms. How do you practice self-distancing? The second one, how would you do self-quarantine when you live in Alexander, where the majority of people are in informal settlement, and there is absolutely no self-quarantine to talk about? How do you even wash your hands for 20 seconds when in the poor rural areas, they don't even have water, it needs to be tapped in some rural schools, they don't even have water as we speak.
Why is it then, Prof, why is it that some sectors of society believe that when there is a pandemic of this nature, those systemic inequalities that are glaring, they take a break in our society?
No, I think people are just being disingenuous. When you live in Bryanston, you've got multiple devices. Your TV, you've got your iPad for yourself, your wife, and your kids. When you live in Emondlo, Nkandla, in Nyanga and Gugulethu, you'll be lucky if there's one phone, and you'll be blessed if it's a smartphone. Stat SA says only 10.4% of South African households have direct internet access. So you can see that there is no way that we can run away from the fact that what COVID-19 has done was to show the gross systemic inequalities. On the one hand, you've got gross wealth and obscene wealth. On the other hand, you've got this self-perpetuating vicious cycle of abject poverty. But let's define what we mean by BE. You see, it's a planned and positive process and strategy that is aimed at transforming the socio-economic environment that have excluded individuals from previously disadvantaged groups in order for these individuals to gain access to opportunities, including developmental opportunities based on their suitability. So it's not anti-anybody. It gives preferential treatment to those marginalized. But if you look at the definition of racism, on the other hand, it needs 3 things to be present. 1, you need to believe that you are inherently superior. Number 2, you must have power. Number 3, you must use that power to exclude. So in South Africa today, 26 years into democracy, when we speak about an inclusive socio-economic growth, who do we want to include? We want to include black people, we want to include women. Why? Because black people, it's all those people that were excluded on the basis that they are not white. Why women? Because women themselves are 51% of the population. Stat SA, over and above being supplemented by the Employment Equity Report from the Employment Equity Commission chaired by Mayor Tabia Kabinde. This is their 21st consecutive year where they've been sharing with us black representation in positions of leadership. Last year's report says blacks in the C-suite are only 14.3%. If we leave it on its own, it will take us 150 years to be broadly reflective of the democracy.
So is the state seizing the moment? Is the state seizing the moment and using this opportunity to build a system that is capable to deliver on equality, as you put it, particularly gender equality?
You see, when you are in a situation of a crisis, you want to use it to be intentional, deliberate, and purposeful. What we want to do, we want to make sure that we ain't going back, because COVID-19 has changed everything. Countries that are wise are saying, how do we use this time to retool, to rethink, to reimagine a new society that we want that is fair, just, and equitable? our preamble to the Constitution, not the main body of the Constitution, says, we the people, united in our diversity, recognizing the past injustices. So we are implored not only to recognize, but we are actually mandated to fix these past imbalances. That Constitution ends by saying it guarantees 3 rights, not only promises them: the freedom of speech, the freedom of association, but freedom from hunger. But we know that more than 50% of South Africans live below the poverty datum line, where they live at less than $2 per day, with now almost 7 million people that are going to be unemployed, with 18 million people on social security being supported by only 16 million people that are gainfully employed. You can see that it's a recipe for disaster. You see, business cannot continue to be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty.
You cite a proposal coming from Hawaii called Feminist Economic Recovery Plan. How would that plan look like in South Africa?
So first of all, it says we must come up with a society that is pro-women, that is based on gender equality. And it says we must pay every woman, irrespective, a stipend of $28 and 50 US cents per hour. We must give, especially single mothers, much more help than would give ordinary citizens, because again, we are trying to lift as we rise. And the society that we want, again, must be based on, we know that when we put a smartphone in the hands of women, not only does their health, nutrition, and their education of their own kids improve, but of their entire society, but also the community where they come from. But the people who are opposed to this, these are the people who are probably taking over from Louis late, when we had a sitting president being sued for extending the most wonderful gift of reconciliation and saying, the Springboks, we are going to retain your name, and the Proteas in cricket, you are going to retain your name. But for that, we want that this team must be broadly reflective of the demographics. Louis late took a sitting president to court. When we said, no, but we don't want apartheid flags in our stadium, Solidarity and AfriForum took the Nelson Mandela Foundation to court to say, no, but it's our right to display hateful symbols that are eliciting very emotive feelings amongst black people of 340 years of colonialism, 84 years of separate development, 48 years of apartheid. And when we said, no, but we want to change the name of Tswane to be broadly reflective of the indigenous original people, not only after Andries Pretorius, they took this ANC-led government to court to say, no, we want it to be left as Pretoria. So at some stage, all of us must choose to be on the right side of history. When we said, no, but we have to embark on land reform, because land is the first means of production, not just expropriation without compensation. They took us to court to say, no, it's okay that we are not recognizing land restitution to restore it to its original owners where it was taken by force and no payment was paid. We are not recognizing land redistribution when 90% of the population is squeezed into 13% of the land. No, not land development. For what purpose and who owns what? So that we can provide not only food security and energy security, but this notion called resilience. Because in Africa, resilience is much more than the food, energy, water.
Let's go back to the Employment Equity Commission. That representation that you gave earlier on, women less than 24% representation, African women less than 4%. Yet we've seen campaigns like Me Too, we've seen other campaigns as well dealing with this issue of inequality. Why have they failed to move the needle?
Because we are still going back to our oppressors and asking them for permission to change. Even though we occupy the political office, we refuse to take control of the levers of the economy. It's ludicrous that we are not creating our own businesses. That as black people, we continue to make babies and we send them to a different neighborhood to go and ask for employment from somebody else when we've been free for 26 years. Imagine if SAA in 26 years had at least one CEO only for 5 years. Today, Kenya Airways and Ethiopian Airways, when they are looking for their own CEO, they'll be looking down south. Up until today, 1% of the population owns more than 70% of the wealth of this country. When we talk about being the most unequal society in the world because we took over from Brazil, we talk about income inequality. But the most frightening thing is actually asset inequality, where we actually fare worse than most people. You see, contrition must be an ongoing thing. The people who have oppressed black people for 340 years need to continue asking for forgiveness. And they must be eternally grateful for the mercy shown. We cannot, in our own country, when we have the policy levers, that we are not using them to really execute, to lift the bottom half into the middle class. Because my grandmother used to say, when your neighbor is hungry, you cannot sleep at night.